There seems to be a misconception when it comes to physician-assisted suicide. Many seem to think that the patients are having the option forced upon them by doctors who want to free up hospital space for other patients who they can make more money off of. However, this is simply not true. There have not been any cases in which the laws allowing patients to choose death when faced with suffering and inevitable death from a terminal illness have been abused by doctors or patients. In Source 4, A.C. Grayling writes about the fear of abuses in the dying with dignity laws in regard to Britain. However, these arguments apply to the United States as well. Grayling writes, "Alas, abuse is possible in all walks of life, but a carefully drafted law such as the one Lord Jeff introduced to the House of Lords would provide careful protections and checks while allowing those in unbearable distress the sanctuary of an easeful end to suffering." The carefully drafted law Grayling talks about has already been introduced in states across America. These laws include careful protections that make a patient pass a very strict set of criteria, including that they must be over 18, must be in a sound state of mind, which eliminates any arguments that they might be depressed and therefore want death more than usual, and they must have been diagnosed with a terminal illness granting them 2 months left to live by a medical professional's best judgment. As can be seen with these protections, it is nearly impossible to take advantage of these laws with the very specific criteria a patient needs to meet before a doctor can provide a prescription for a life-ending drug. Even if the patient meets all the criteria as judged by one doctor, another doctor must be called in to evaluate the patient completely separately. So you need 2 doctors' complete and total agreement that they meet all of the criteria before a prescription can be administered. It is a common misconception that there are thousands upon thousands of terminally ill patients taking advantage of the dying with dignity laws that are already in effect. However, in reality, there are only a few hundred that have ever taken advantage of it, because oftentimes doctors won't tell patients that physician-assisted suicide is even an option. Even when patients ask for it under the law, doctors have the right to refuse the patient a prescription for a life-ending drug if they do not believe in physician-assisted suicide themselves. With the strict criteria in place to prevent the abuse of these laws, and the doctors and or patients having the right to refuse the option if they don't want to die yet or would rather continue and try to fight the illness, there is no reason not to make physician-assisted suicide legal across the United States.
2+ rebuttal.
Okay, in your last rebuttal, you said that in places where PAS is available, it's vetted by a procedure that makes sure the patient is mentally competent to make the decision, but the procedure is still set in place by a doctor or multiple doctors, as you said, not the patient, so it can still set an undue influence on the patient when making the decision.
Also, as Zach was saying, pets are completely different and are not expected to live as long as humans are, and that's why it's a completely different situation. And it's under the law, we're doing physician-assisted suicides for humans, not animals.
31 seconds, point 4, Con.
Physician-assisted suicide should not be legal because all the relief it provides to a suffering patient can be matched and surpassed through palliative care. The single most common reason a patient with a terminal or lifetime diagnosis would seek PAS is because they are in chronic pain and are therefore unable to have a high quality of life. Through palliative care, this suffering can be alleviated and quality of life restored without the premature taking of life. The goal of palliative care is to provide relief from the symptoms and stress of a serious illness through specialized treatment. This is a far superior alternative to PAS because it alleviates the suffering of a patient to such a degree that they can once again enjoy truly valuable things, such as spending time with their family, rather than dwelling on their pain. PAS is advertised as a last resort cure for suffering. However, no patient of sound mind would choose to die if they knew that they could live, free of pain, and continue to be with their loved ones in spite of their disease. The success rate of this treatment is astounding. The vast majority of patients who receive palliative care are relieved of most, if not all, of their pain and lead what they describe in their own words as a quality life. In addition to this, the majority of patients who consider or were recommended PAS and chose not to follow through say that they are glad they made the choice they did. Many who choose to receive palliative care rather than PAS live much longer than had been predicted they would, and go to live out their last days happily with their friends and families. Given the choice between death and several years of happy life, it would be illogical to continue to promote PAS as a viable option for patient care when such a vastly superior alternative is available. The immorality of encouraging any unnecessary taking of life goes against everything we stand for as compassionate human beings.
1 minute, 38 seconds. Rebuttal?
This is in regard to John's point. Removing life support leading to death is currently legal, so therefore if doctors are uncomfortable with providing death for a patient in pain, they should not be in that position.
Also, you say many people want to stay alive, and that is true, but there are cases where they just don't have the options, such as the previously sourced Brittany Maynard, who even said in the source that she wanted to live, but there was really no other option than physician-assisted suicide.
29 seconds. Final point. Pro?
Physician-assisted suicide could save the lives of hundreds of people dying from organ failures. If legalization of physician-assisted suicide were to occur with the consent of patients, it would be possible to harvest healthy organs from the cadaver to benefit multiple ill patients that would otherwise suffer a painful death. Source 5 states, the plaintiffs also argue that these doctors are already allowed to help terminally ill patients die in some circumstances, such as when they remove life support. The fact is that they cannot hasten death. The fact that they cannot hasten death for other terminally ill patients violates the Equal Protection Clause of the state constitution. The option to remove life support and organ donation in these situations is often the decision of the patient's family because the cognitive function of the patient is often low or non-existent at this point. However, if this process is legalized, terminally ill patients could choose what they want to happen to their body before they reach this point. Terminally ill patients can choose when they wish to end their lives, as well as what will happen to their bodies when once they die. People can wait for years on the transplant list, and many die before they find a match. As terminally ill patients reach the end of their lives naturally, the entire body is often affected, and organs may be unusable for transplant. However, through the process of physician-assisted suicide, it's possible that the end-of-life wish of one person could save the lives of multiple people struggling with organ failures. I believe Marcia Angel in Source 6 said it better when she said, the argument that physicians should only be healers focuses too much on the physician and not enough on the patient. Source 6. This is a great point. The patient's decision should be the final one when it comes to end-of-life care, because the sacrifice of one suffering soul could save another.
1 minute, 45 seconds. Rebuttal?
Okay, as Ben stated, there was a woman who wanted to live but had no other choice but PAS. But the other choice is always to live out the rest of your life and await a natural death. PAS is never a requirement for any illness. Before it was invented, people had their illness and they died naturally of it. It was never, I don't get what you're saying when you say that she had no other choice, because the other choice is natural death.
There's always another choice, and prescribing lethal injections is only a way to end life instead of looking for a cure. A doctor's job is to end the pain of their patients and not end their lives.
32 seconds. Final point. Con?
Physician-assisted suicide is fundamentally wrong because doctors commonly give incorrect prognosis, leading to a doctor's decision to follow through with PAS. Such false advisory leads to unnecessary deaths, the very thing every doctor is employed to fight against. As previously mentioned, PAS is unethical and against the Hippocratic Oath. As stated in Source 1, physician-assisted suicide represents the abandonment of the vow that doctors make to care for patients and promote their welfare. Although this point is, in itself, a standalone argument, it also further supports the claim of misdiagnosis. Oftentimes, patients are diagnosed with a rare disease and given a short amount of time left to live. If the patient then decides to endure physician-assisted suicide because of this diagnosis, this removes all hope of recovery, the very basis on which modern medicine was founded. Although miracle recoveries are not overwhelmingly common, they do occur on the occasion. The fact that such recoveries are not immensely common does not that could have been saved. Additionally, there is truly no way for a doctor to correctly predict the longevity of a sick individual. Even if a patient has a terminal illness, it is scientifically impossible for the medical professional to put a definite time label on his or her life. Allowing PAS will put far too much pressure and power upon doctors.
1 minute, 23 seconds. Rebuttal?
So there are a few issues with that argument. The most resounding one is that doctors very frequently are able to guess, not exactly obviously, but to a large degree of accuracy, the approximate time that a patient will die. And even if one doctor is severely inaccurate, there has to be at least 2 doctors for physician-assisted suicide to be allowed. Additionally, there's constant references to the Hippocratic Oath in this debate. Even if the Hippocratic Oath could not be changed, then it would just be a millennia-old document that barely applies to our society today, as it was created in ancient Greece. As it can be changed, as our cultural values change, it should not be an obstacle in the way of progress.
Exactly 1 minute. Okay,